There's a specific moment in every financial collapse that I want to talk about today. It's the moment when an unexpected expense arrives, a car repair, a medical bill, a home emergency, and you have nothing to cover it with, and I mean nothing. Not because you haven't been working hard, and not because you don't care, but because the buffer that used to exist between you and that kind of hit is gone. That moment, that specific gut punch moment of having no cushion, is one of the most demoralizing experiences in a financial rebuild because it sets you back when you were starting to move forward. I've been in that moment many times, multiple times, after each of my 3 collapses, and I can tell you exactly what it does to a man psychologically and exactly how to build the buffer that prevents it from happening again. That's what this video is about, so let's get into it. After I filed bankruptcy in 2010 and started over with nothing, the thing I was most afraid of wasn't the debt I was carrying or the income I needed to rebuild. It was the next unexpected hit, because I knew it was coming. It always comes. Life doesn't pause your emergencies because you're in the middle of a financial rebuild. The car doesn't care that you're already stretched. The medical bill doesn't know you're rebuilding from zero. The roof doesn't wait until you're stable before it starts leaking. And without a buffer, without anything between you and that next hit, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis that can derail weeks or months of progress in a single day. After 2010, I watched this happen to myself twice in the first year of rebuilding. A car repair that wiped out what little I had managed to save. A medical expense that sent me backward at the moment when I was finally starting to feel momentum. Both times, the financial setback was significant, but the psychological setback was worse because it made me feel like the rebuild was impossible, like every step forward was going to get knocked back by something I couldn't predict or control. And that feeling, that sense that the ground will never be stable, is one of the most dangerous things a man in a rebuild can carry, because it tempts you to stop trying to save it all. Why save when the next hit is just going to wipe it out and take it? Why build when it keeps getting knocked down? The answer to that question is the emergency fund. Not a large one, not a perfect one, but just a real one. Built deliberately, protected fiercely, and sized correctly for where you actually are, not where the financial advice industry assumes you are. Step 1. Understand what an emergency fund actually is in a rebuild. Standard financial advice tells you to build 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund before you do anything else with your money. 3 to 6 months. For a man in a financial rebuild, a man who may be starting from zero with debt he's managing, an income he's rebuilding, that number is so far away it feels impossible. And when a goal feels impossible, most men don't start at all. So let me reframe this completely. In a rebuild, your emergency fund is not 3 to 6 months of expenses. Your emergency fund is the amount of money that prevents the next unexpected hit from becoming a crisis that derails your momentum. That is a much smaller number, and it's a number you can reach. It's more manageable. For most men in the early stages of a rebuild, that number is somewhere between $500 and $1,000. Not enough to cover a major catastrophe, enough to cover car repair, a minor medical expense, an unexpected utility bill, without having to go further into debt or wipe out every dollar you've managed to set aside. That is your first target. Not 3 months, not 6 months, just $1,000 sitting in a separate account, untouched, unless a genuine emergency arrives. Step 2, make it separate and make it hard to touch. The biggest mistake men make with an emergency fund in a rebuild is keeping it in the same account as their regular spending money. When the money is visible and accessible, it gets used. Not on emergencies, on the daily friction of a tight budget that constantly needs topping up. The emergency fund has to live somewhere separate, a different account in a different institution if possible, somewhere that requires a deliberate decision and a small amount of friction to access. Not impossible to reach in a genuine emergency, but not instantly available for anything that feels urgent in the moment. I recommend putting it in a separate bank than the bank that you use for your normal expenses. After each of my rebuilds, I used a basic savings account at a credit union separate from my main checking account. It took a transfer and usually 24 to 48 hours to move the money. That small friction was enough to stop me from dipping into it for anything that wasn't a genuine emergency. Separate the account. Different institution if possible. Small friction between you and the money. That structure protects the fund from daily pressures of a tight budget. Step 3. Fund it with small, consistent amounts, not windfalls. Most men in a rebuild wait for a windfall to start their emergency fund. A big paycheck or a bonus, a tax refund, a month where everything goes right and there's actually money left over. That approach almost never works because windfalls in a rebuild are rare. And the money that arrives in a windfall almost always gets absorbed by the accumulated pressure of a tight budget long before it makes it into savings. The emergency fund gets built through small, consistent, non-negotiable contributions, not money that's left over after everything else. The money that comes off the top before you spend anything else. Even $10 a week, $25 a month. The amount is less important than the consistency and the priority. Because $25 a month becomes $300 in a year, and $300 becomes $600. $600 is already more than half of your first target. Small, consistent, non-negotiable, off the top. That's how the emergency fund gets built in a real rebuild. Not through windfalls that never come, but through the discipline of protecting a small amount every single week, no matter what. Sometimes there are banks that will round up all of your expenses and you can choose to have it rounded up to the next dollar, and that difference between what you spent and what the roundup number is gets deposited to your savings account or your emergency fund. And that's done automatically. And I do suggest setting up whatever amount you're going to deposit on a consistent basis, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Do that on an auto deposit instead of trying to do it manually, and you'll never miss the money. So step 4, replenish it immediately when you use it. At some point, you will use the emergency fund. That is what it's there for. A genuine, unexpected expense arrives, and you handle it without going into debt or derailing your rebuild. That is a win. That is the system working exactly as designed. But the moment after you use it, the very next week, replenishment becomes the top financial priority, above everything except the survival number. An emergency fund that gets used and not replaced is not an emergency fund. It's a one-time buffer that leaves you exposed to the next hit with nothing between you and it. After I used my emergency fund the first time in my rebuild after 2010, I treated refilling it as urgent as any bill I owed. I didn't wait until things felt more stable. I didn't save up gradually over several months while hoping nothing else went wrong. I redirected every available dollar above the survival number back into the emergency fund until it was restored. Use it when you need it. Replenish it immediately. That's what makes it a system rather than a one-time fix. Step 5. Build above it once it's solid. The $500 to $1,000 emergency fund is the floor of your financial buffer. It is not the destination. Once you've hit that first target and maintained it consistently, meaning you've refilled it at least once and it has not been empty for more than 2 weeks, you expand the target. The next target is 1 month of survival number expenses, not comfortable living expenses, but your survival number, the bare minimum from the earlier video. 1 month of that amount sitting in the emergency fund alongside the initial buffer. Then you work towards 2 months, 3 months, each target built on top of the previous one, each one making the next unexpected hit less capable of derailing the rebuild. This is not a race, it is a progression, slow, deliberate, one level at a time. The same principle that governs every other part of the rebuild governs this one too. Protect the floor, build above it, one level at a time. Now here's what I want you to understand about the emergency fund in a financial rebuild. It is not a luxury. It's not something you build after everything else is handled. It is the thing that makes everything else possible, because without it, every unexpected expense is a crisis. And a man who is constantly managing crisis cannot build anything. $1,000, separate account, small consistent contributions off the top, replenished immediately when used. That is the system. It is not complicated. It's not glamorous. It's just the single most stabilizing financial move a man in a rebuild can make. And it starts with the very next dollar you have above your survival number. Now listen, if you just found this channel, you need to watch my full story first. I'm 58 years old, I've lost everything 3 times, and I'm currently rebuilding in that 3rd time right now. It's real time for me, and every video on this channel exists because of what that journey taught me. That video is called Starting Over at 58, and the link is in the bio. And if you want a step-by-step system, instead of trying to figure all this out on your own, I put together a free 30-day rebuild blueprint specifically for men in our situation. It's 4 weeks, 1 clear direction, 1 video a day that you watch and take notes on and take action on. The link is in the description below. And then next Thursday, we're going to go deep on one of the most powerful psychological shifts in a comeback, which is how to stop letting other people's opinion of your situation determine how hard you fight to rebuild it. That one drops on Thursday. And if you don't want to miss it, hit subscribe right now. This channel posts every Monday and Thursday specifically for men who are rebuilding after losing everything. And if that's you, you belong here. And then finally, if you found this helpful, please share it with another man who needs to hear it, a friend, a family member, someone you know who's going through this right now. And let's rebuild together, because that's wealth mode.